Welcome to America's Cannabis Conversation. Heard every Saturday at 4:20 p.m. online at americascannabisconversation.com. Each week, we provide our listeners information, education, and insight into the exploding medical and adult use cannabis industry. You'll hear from industry experts, elected officials, local growers, detractors, and more. Learn how to build your own cannabis business, how to grow the product, what's legal, and where it's legal. Tune in each week to hear the latest industry news and updates from the American Cannabis Industry Association in Washington, tips on investing in cannabis, personal success stories, and more. It's time to join the conversation. And here's your host, Dan Perkins.
Dan Perkins here with your American Cannabis Conversation. Quick news. San Francisco, California. The Hawthorne Gardening Company is making a special offer to listeners of America's Cannabis Conversation. Hawthorne Gardening Company wants to help those 420 listeners who want to consider growing their own cannabis or hemp at home with a special offer to save 10% on your own grow tent. To take advantage of this limited time special order, you have to go to W420radionetwork.com and look for the announcement and the special offer discount code. You will click on the code and it will take you to the special website and then select the tent of your choice. This is a limited time offer, so to get your discount code, go to W420radionetwork.com and look for the special offer. Washington, D.C. President Trump threatens to pull cannabis protection. President's new financial plan for 2021 fiscal year has dropped, and to a few people's surprise, it features massive uptick in spending on the military and border security, and cuts to student loan assistance and social welfare programs. But what about cannabis? The news isn't great. The document proposes the elimination of a rider that has kept the feds from interfering with state legal marijuana programs. Trump originally expressed his support for medical cannabis states' marijuana rights on the presidential campaign trail. But when he took office, he filled the Justice, Health, and Homeland Security departments with appointees who subscribed to the reefer madness school of cannabis policy. The president bellicose border policy likewise hinges on a re-escalation of the war on drugs. The 2021 budget isn't all bad news for the future of cannabis. $17 million has been set aside to fund a national hemp program, clarifying regulations and government assistance to the industry. Iowa City, Iowa. Businesses are more profitable and innovative in states with legal marijuana, a study finds. States have been experimenting with various forms of marijuana legalization for years, and according to a new research study, business is better where cannabis is legal. To investigate the impact legalization has had on the economy, research at the University of Iowa analyzed 9,810 corporations between 1991 and 2017, finding a multitude of positive effects after states enact medical marijuana laws. The report went on to say that firms headquartered in marijuana legalized states receive higher market valuations, stock returns, improve employee productivity, and increase innovation. And that's your American Cannabis Conversation. Quick news. Who's joining the conversation today? Two of our field reporters, Rich Walcoff and Chase Roberts, will be bringing you on-site location interviews of important people in the industry. Rich Walcoff, one of our field reporters, will be speaking to Alex Traverso, the Assistant Chief of Communications for the California Bureau of Cannabis Control. Dr. Jordan Tishler, our cannabis doctor on call, will be speaking about the role that cannabis can play in treatment of cancer symptoms. Devon Langford of Hawthorne Gardening Company, a subsidiary of Scott Miracle-Gro, will talk about hydroponics and a special offer for W420 radio listeners. Chase Roberts, one of our W420 radio correspondents, will be speaking with Scott Goldie, CEO of Goldseed. And Bruce Linton is the executive chairman of Viro Health, a physician-founded, patient-focused company that provides cannabis-based products and care in 11 states. Make sure you go to W420radionetwork.com and click on the box for the special discount on Hawthorne Gardening Company tent products. Now let's get this conversation started. I'm Dan Perkins. Welcome to the conversation. Joining us today is a very important guest who's got his fingers in many, many different parts of the cannabis business. His name is Bruce Linton. We're going to talk to him today about what's going on in the business, what he thinks is likely to happen from a regulatory standpoint, and what's the outlook for the business. So, Bruce, thank you for joining us on the conversation today.
Yeah, no, good to be here.
Thank you. We saw the market drop 60% last year, some stabilizing in pricing through the first of the year. Things have, from what I can tell and talking to people around the country, things have changed. Where there were lines around the stores, we actually have stores closing in some markets. So give us your top-line view of what's going on in the market.
Well, I think there's a few things at play, right? There's still no clarity in the U.S. What the federal position will be, and for either party in the 2020. So that means in the absence of that, you have state by state, and each are not equal. Then you have overall capital markets, I don't care what you're in, haven't been performing particularly amazing in the last little while. And so the effect of that is that you have less capital available and less certainty. And so, yeah, there has been a contraction, but I think there's also been an increasing strength in a few companies because, when you get in these circumstances, the best operating companies actually have advantages because then it starts to matter if you're 5 or 7% more effective on producing, and it matters if you're 4 or 5% less costly on your SG&A. And so where we are now is where things usually get to, which is it's time for a tidy up, and that means regrettably some things disappear, and the ones that remain probably are quite a bit stronger.
Bruce, I had an opportunity to interview last week a woman who's a business broker. She buys and sells all different kinds of cannabis businesses. And she somewhat echoes what you're talking about. Capital is harder to get, and people are expecting more out of their return. But is capital really drying up, or is it just gotten a little tighter and more productivity needs to be developed in order to attract capital?
I think capital is tightening up, but it's not that it's unavailable. It just is being a bit more thoughtful because if a year ago or 2 years ago, you threw some money in the sector, you were almost guaranteed no matter what you did, you win. Mm-hmm. And now you actually have to analyze to say, why does this company have differentiated goods? Why does this company have preferred locations? Which states are they in? Because quite a few U.S. states are medical only right now. And right. Many of those over the next 12 months are going to invert to be medical and rec. And when that occurs, there is a much bigger market, particularly in states that are well governed, right? When California said we're going to be medical and rec, I think the reaction should have been that will increase the market size by very little compared to, say, a New York. Mm-hmm. And so there's going to be a couple of events which will cause some markets to be much better over the next 12 months, and capital is looking for that, and that's where they're going to allocate their money. They're not going to go to markets that are kind of peaking out. And, that is a normal and reasonable thing. But I think the key thing is for the people who are actually in the sector, if they spend a lot of their time going around sounding like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh going, oh, man, it's tough. Well, money does not really enjoy turning to people who are in despair. You can't be basically optimistic, but you do have to know your business and why it's going to be a good business over a medium term. And so what I was pushing in one of my sessions I did this week with a number of people in the industry was, folks, there's going to be a cycle up. This is a cycle down. On the cycle up, don't get wild and crazy. On the cycle down, don't become depressed and doomsdayers. This is a time for a steady hand. And so it is what it is. Let's kind of just keep moving.
Bruce, I wonder, because you said something that struck me just a moment ago. Were the people who came into this early on, did they really have any idea what the business was really about, or were they trying to ride a wave?
Well, I would say there's a real mix of everybody, right? So I think some of the early participants saw the opportunity as an enormous generational change. Mm-hmm. And they thought about, how do I contribute positively to that over the next 5 or 10 years? Mm-hmm. And then there were some folks who said, this looks like a great way for me to double my money. I don't care what I have to do. And Then there were people who read about this in the paper after it had been running for 4 or 5 years, who probably meant to contribute a lot positively, but were sort of late in arriving, and the effect of that was that maybe where they allocated their capital was late, meaning, I'm going to help invest in somebody who's going to grow cannabis in Canada. Well, that is not a good thing to do starting about 2 years ago, because there was enough investment there. There wasn't enough investment in how do I create advanced products. And there wasn't enough investment in how do I do clinical research. And so, it's a pretty uneven crowd, but I would suggest that I think there's a great number of people who are in this space that actually wish to be here for a long time and want to create a lot of value and also want to change the way the world works.
I had dinner over the weekend with a gentleman who comes from Springfield, Massachusetts, and he said 2 years ago or so, when cannabis became legal in Massachusetts, there were people ringing the block wanting to get into the stores, and now you can get in anytime you want. So was there a sense of novelty in the beginning? People wanted to see what it was all about, and that novelty's worn off, and now we have to, for lack of a better description, Bruce, we have to run businesses for real now.
Yeah, I think, listen, you have almost 100 years of prohibition. Of course, people are going to line up and buy lots. That is your grandparents didn't know that this was going to happen. Your parents told you it would never happen, and you can't believe it's happening. Mm-hmm. And so, for sure, now I think the obligation is to say, what kind of products do we have that are actually going to make people come back again and again? What is the customer, what would make them the most loyal? And then it comes down to, why are they buying it? And if some of them are here to have fun, are the formats we have what they want? And what I mean by that is, it's still socially kind of normal if you're going to have an intoxicant that it's typically in the form of a beverage. Do we have good beverages? Now, if we have good beverages, are there places other than buying them in our store people can go and consume them? So are there are lots of bars and pubs? Are there venues in your state where if you just wanted to try one rather than going to a store and buying it and going home and sitting by yourself or something, are there places in the state where you can actually go and consume, without smoking, cannabis socially with a group of people? So essentially what they're doing is they're really, as one person and I discussed, bars don't sell you drinks, they rent you space in which you have drinks, and that's why they cost more. Is there a spot like that for cannabis? Not many places, nope. And so what we need to see is an evolution of the products available and an evolution of the places people can consume them so that it becomes a more socially balanced kind of thing with alcohol. Now, if they're buying them for medical indications, sleep, anxiety, post-activity, pain, workout. Since that store opened, has anybody done anything further to work on dosage, delivery mechanisms, how much, how often, what format? Or are we simply just selling them the best we had? And so I think that the obligation is an evolution of the specifics of, I have a lot of people who tell me they use CBD so that they have less inflammation and less pain after they do sports, which is terrific. But my question is, do you take it before or after you do sports? Do you know how much you should take based on a per pound basis? Do you have to take it for like a day or a week before you get the effect, or is it instant after one thing? Because a lot of pharmaceutical products, if someone tells you have to take an antibiotic, the first one you take doesn't fix the problem, does it?
No.
And so really, I think that the lineups will form for the various purposes again and more durably if we give people really what they need and want. And I think I kind of captured some of the things that would land in that category.
We're speaking with Bruce Linton, who is an entrepreneur that's involved in many different aspects of the cannabis business. Bruce, I did an interview yesterday with a medical researcher at the University of Iowa. He wants to study what is the appropriate level of THC for the elderly because he believes that there may be overdosing, which is adversely affecting the cognitive behavior of the elderly.
That's an interesting thing. What I want to do is, what cohort has THC only? What cohort has THC and other pharmaceutical products, and what cohort has pharmaceutical products only and no THC? Mm-hmm. So to say that you have a diminished cognitive function from something is not that hard to establish. Now you have those 3 cohorts, and show me that, because I think it is possible, right? If you have too much of anything, it may change your functionality, but what is too much would be a question, because at some point in time you might be able to use THC as a method to extinguish some of the other pharmaceutical products which have a drug-to-drug interaction, and maybe you'll find it's better. So I think it's a good thesis to pursue. I don't know that he has good data, because I see data just being gathered over the last year in Canada on that whole cognitive function basis.
What do you see on the horizon as far as a product that might be groundbreaking, if any?
I think we're going to start seeing what they call rare cannabinoids be less rare. There are many ways to start to make them, and you can change the plant's functionality so it's more like a bioreactor. You can actually make them in various synthetic forms, and that some of those are going to become tested against something like how does it become an appetite suppressant, or how do you isolate the ones which make an appetite generate. And when you want a suppressant, you're trying to deal with weight gain or weight control. If you want an appetite generator, you're dealing with somebody in an oncology treatment or other various wasting circumstances. And so I think we're going to start talking about the texture of specific cannabinoids and in what dosage to achieve something really quite targeted, more so than cannabis at large.
We've been speaking with Bruce Linton, who is a multifaceted individual involved in many business segments of the cannabis industry. And Bruce, thank you for joining us today on America's Cannabis Conversation.
Thank you.
You're listening to America's Cannabis Conversation on the W420 Radio Network.
Chase Roberts, one of our field reporters, reports from the International Cannabis Business Conference 2020 with an interview with Scott Goldie, CEO of Golden Seed.
Hi, this is Chase Roberts, reporting for W420 Radio Network, and today I'm talking with...
Scott Goldie.
And Scott, who are you with?
I'm the CEO of a company called Golden Seed.
Please tell me about Golden Seed.
Golden Seed is a vertically integrated cannabis company, and we recently become a vertically integrated hemp company as well.
And I heard you made a recent major announcement. What is the announcement?
We're the first cannabis company in the United States that were qualified by the SEC to sell shares to anyone in the general public.
That is exciting. And tell me, at Golden Seed, what is your mission for Golden Seed? What are you putting out there that other people are not putting out there?
What we're creating is a lifestyle brand that's based on iconic California culture. That includes surfing, it includes music, it includes art, and we're really trying to promote that, because as this goes national, we feel like that will really resonate with people across the country. And, the other thing I think really differentiates us is how we grow. We grow 100% sustainable, no chemicals, and our pesticides, fertilizers, none of that. We start actually with our own soil that we create on a worm farm that we have.
That's amazing. Do you find other companies do that too, or are you one of the few that do sustainable practices?
I think we're one of the few that start all the way with the soil. You know, there are people that are moving to organics because I think the safety and the purity of the plant that you're going to ingest or smoke, it needs to be there. You shouldn't have chemicals on the plant.
Absolutely not. And how long has Golden Seed been in business?
We started out in December of 17, and we've just started our biggest crop, 135,000 square feet of cultivation down in Santa Cruz.
And please tell my listeners, if they want more information or to contact you guys, what is the best way to do that?
So our website is gseed.com. And if you want to find more out about the investment opportunities, that's owngoldenseed.com. And I'd just like to state that in 30 days, we've had over 1,000 applications for investment from 46 states and over 17 countries.
That is incredible. Congratulations to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Want to find out if cannabis can help your medical condition? It's time to hear from our cannabis doctor on call.
Welcome back to the conversation. Joining us today is our cannabis doctor on call, Dr. Jordan Tishler. And we're going to talk about cancer. Not a pleasant subject to talk about, but one of the areas where cannabis is approved in many states with medical marijuana as helping people deal with cancer. Dr. Jordan, welcome back to the conversation.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Tell us what you want to talk about today, Doctor.
Well, here's the thing. My practice, as you know, focuses really on people who have pretty severe illnesses of various sorts. And so, as you can imagine, cancer in one form or another is a large percentage of the people that I see. And so I've kind of developed a lot of familiarity with what we can achieve with cannabis, and I wanted to talk with you about that today because I think that it's underutilized, frankly. We do know that, there are some studies that show about 1 in 4 cancer patients uses cannabis in some form. And so on some level, 1 in 4 is pretty good, given the fact that at least until recently it's been completely illegal. But on the other hand, given what people who have cancer are facing and the broad range of difficulties that can be helped with cannabis, 1 in 4 seems kind of low to me. And I think it really should be, 90%. Never say everybody because that's kind of knee-jerk. And there's certainly some people who can't tolerate cannabis in one form or another. But quite frankly, given the severity of what goes along with the cancer diagnosis, I think that we can make a lot of mileage for people under those circumstances. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we can do, what we know, what we can anticipate down the line, and then also talk a little bit about some of the mythology that's out there and, where that fits. So when it comes to thinking about cancer, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you finish, please.
I was just going to say, in terms of the way I think about cancer, I kind of lump the discussion into 2 halves. The first half, as I was talking to you about earlier, is really what I call symptom management. Right? When people have cancer, they get an array of discomforts, whether that's pain from the cancer itself or pain as a result of some of the things that we use to treat cancer. Certainly we see people who have nausea and vomiting, who have difficulty eating. And then there are other things that kind of just go along with being told that you have cancer and going through the process, like depression and anxiety and insomnia. And all of those things are really well managed with cannabis if it's done in a careful and thoughtful way. So that's kind of lump number 1. And then, we can talk more about sort of the whole discussion of whether cannabis itself can actually treat the cancer, the tumor itself. That's sort of a separate discussion that I think of in a separate way.
Let's talk about the first part of what you want to talk about, and let's go into treating symptoms, initial symptoms.
Yeah, and so you're absolutely right. I 100% agree with you. No medicine is without some risk, some side effect. And cannabis is, compared to many medicines, very safe, but nothing's 100%, right? And so there are people out there who, shouldn't take cannabis for a number of reasons, perhaps a family history, a personal history of severe, not mild, but severe psychiatric illness. There are people out there who can be made very, very sick with CBD because of its interactions with other medications, and in particular, their the genetic composition of their liver may be different. So we need to think about all of those sorts of things. But in the grand scheme of things, when we think about a successful conventional medication, we're pretty happy if it works sort of 40% of the time. And in my experience, clinical experience, I would say that cannabis works about 80% of the time, so twice as often. And I think that that's a really stunning number. But it isn't 100%. Right. And so we have to be realistic about that. The other thing that I think sometimes mystifies some of my colleagues is the fact that cannabis can be helpful for such a wide range of seemingly unrelated things like nausea and vomiting and depression. But that gets back to the things we've talked about in the past about the way in which the endocannabinoid system, that our internal cannabis system, is built, and what it really does is maintain the balance or homeostasis in our body. And so when you get cancer and we start to throw at that cancer a bunch of different medications aimed at killing it off, that's got to be one of the more major blows to our body's homeostasis or balance that there is, right? I mean, if you think about it, the way in which cancer treatments work is that basically they go in and kill off all of the cells that are rapidly dividing. Now, that includes cancer, but it also includes some other normal cells, and that makes us sick. And so the goal with cancer chemotherapy in particular is usually to beat the cancer so hard that we really knock it out, and hopefully we do that fast enough and hard enough that the person actually, though suffering, survives it and then is well again thereafter. So it is fundamentally a kind of brutal process, both in conception and in reality. When we start to see people who are having the pain or having the inability to eat because they're so sore, their mouth, their throat, all of that is so sore, or simply that they just, that the chemistry is such that they're just turned off by food, using cannabis in low doses, very gently, can make a world of difference. And so, there are a number of different approaches that vary depending upon where we are in the treatment and sort of what is a primary set of symptoms and how often or how much of the time of the day these symptoms are ongoing. But basically it kind of varies, comes down to using this by inhalation versus using it orally. The inhalation, as we've talked about before, is something where we would want a quality cannabis vaporizer so that we're not smoking it and exposing ourselves to various carcinogens that obviously would be counterproductive while we're trying to treat the cancer. But the key thing about inhalation is that it's rapid onset. So if you have nausea and you're going to vomit, or it's lunchtime and you need to eat because it's time now, you don't really want to be sitting around waiting for an edible to do its thing because they're slow and unpredictable, right? Whereas inhalation gets right in there and does what we need to do. On the other hand, if you're in a position where perhaps you have some chemotherapy-induced neuropathy pain, or you have metastases to the bone which cause pain, and so you're in pain kind of round the clock, then using inhalation can be counterproductive because while, you feel better for a little while, you get this up, down kind of yo-yo effect, and that actually can make things worse. So in those situations, the edibles are much more useful because they're longer acting, even if they're slow to start. So there are a bunch of different situations where using the same medicine can get us very different effects, but we're able to cover a wide range of problems that cancer patients face.
We're speaking with our cannabis doctor on call, Dr. Jordan Tishler. How is it possible that this one thing can treat so many things that are happening in our system?
Well, that's a great question, and it really comes down to understanding what it is that endocannabinoid system, our internal system, is doing. When we think about sort of a neurologic or endocrine system, we tend to think about things that we can see the effect of, right? So, if I'm standing here as I am, talking to you and waving my arm wildly about, we can see that my arm is moving, and that's because there's a neurologic system that connects my thought, move my arm, in my brain down through various nerves to the muscles that make my arm move. And so we've known about that sort of a system for a very long time, and there are a whole bunch of them. There's a mood system, there's a reward system, there's a pain sensing system, there's a visual system, right? There's a language system. There are all these sort of primary systems. But what was less obvious to us is that there are systems, or at least in particular one system, this endocannabinoid system, that ties all of those other systems together and makes them work properly together, essentially as a whole organism. And it's because that system, that endocannabinoid system, is not so visible. It's up there kind of, doing the behind-the-scenes things, the coordination of all of those other systems, that it wasn't immediately obvious to us that there would be such a system. And it's taken 60-odd years for us to understand, largely because we went looking for why does this plant do these things. It's led us to understand a whole new system, both neurologically and also sort of body-wide. But the fact that it coordinates across all of those different systems means that it has an effect on sort of very, very different sets of actions or problems. And that's the part that everyone has a hard time wrapping their head around. But that's why it works across all those problems.
How do I go to find a doctor who understands what you just said, and cannabis is one of the things that they use in their arsenal to try and deal with cancer?
First of all, I'm not on the spot by that question. I think that's a perfectly reasonable question. And the answer is this. Look, this whole system is relatively new. And yes, we can talk about the ways in which the legal system has impeded our knowledge of all that. But to your question of why isn't this not sort of more on the tip of the doctor's tongue, it's a complex system. It's a complex subject to which they've had no training yet. We're getting there, but that's not going to help the guys who are out there already, practicing. It's only going to help the new doctors. And it is enough of a new and complex system that, quite frankly, it's probably beyond the scope of most physicians' daily practice, which is why the way I practice this kind of medicine is as a specialist. So I work with many of the physicians, say, at the Dana-Farber Cancer Center here in Boston, and I see their patients. They're treating the cancer directly, and then the patients come to me for help with how can cannabis make this go better. And that's a very good model because it allows them to get that benefit of my years of experience, et cetera, without it having to sort of be shoehorned somehow into this medical oncology visit where there's frankly already way too much to go on, And so if somebody is out there suffering with these sorts of things or knows somebody who's suffering with these sorts of things, the first place I would turn is to the Association of Cannabis Specialists. And their website is cannabis-specialist.org. I'll say it again, cannabis-specialist.org. And the reason is this is a group of the doctors who are out there who know this sort of thing and who want to take care of their patients and are very evidence-driven. And we have a list of people, of members, doctors, and other clinicians who are available to help you or your loved ones in wherever you live. If it happens that list doesn't have somebody in your neck of the woods, then I would say connect with me directly. And you can go to my website, which is inhalemd.com, inhalemd.com, and you can click on the link there and send me an email, and we can set up a telemedicine consultation. I do them all over the country and even around the world because, in fact, the reality here is that there aren't enough knowledgeable cannabis specialists yet, and so I do whatever I can to sort of fill in the gaps and make sure that everybody gets what they need.
We've been discussing with Dr. Jordan Tishler cancer, and you've already given everybody how they get a hold of you, so thank you for joining us in the conversation today, Doctor.
Totally my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
America's newest and fastest growing cannabis-focused radio network is expanding across the country and looking to add to our sales and marketing team. America's Cannabis Conversation offers listeners insight and information on the exploding world of cannabis. It also gives advertisers the opportunity to reach a hyper-targeted audience, literally neighborhood by neighborhood, in markets all across the country. We're looking for a few motivated individuals that want to essentially run their own local business in markets like Boston, Las Vegas, Reno, Orlando, and more. To learn more about this exciting opportunity or to apply, visit americascannabisconversation.com.
Now let's go to Rich Walcoff, one of our field reporters who's doing a special report on Alex Traverso of the California Bureau of Cannabis Control.
Well, the biggest industry in the world for cannabis is in California, $3 billion last year. Unfortunately, 80% of that is in the black market. And we're joined by Alex Traverso, the Assistant Chief of Communications in the Bureau of Cannabis Control. So it's great that cannabis is legal. It's unfortunate that 4/5 of the cannabis consumed in California is not legal.
Right. And that's, I think that was to be expected when we started out. I think every state that's legalized before California has had a problem with the illegal market. Our situation is a little unique in the fact that, when medical cannabis was legalized back in 1996, that there wasn't any rules around it. So you had all these operators out there that were a medical cannabis establishment that didn't just go away when Prop 64 passed. They're still there, right? So these are people who have been operating for 2 decades that suddenly it's, you have to close your doors, and a lot of them aren't going to do that. So it's been a big challenge for us.
Yeah, and the fact that 70% of municipalities do not even allow for cultivation or dispensaries in California. So now you're really behind the 8 ball.
Right. So you just basically described our 2 main challenges is local control and the illegal market, and those 2 kind of work in concert because again, when Prop 64 was passed, that gave the local jurisdictions the chance to just ban things entirely, and in those areas, just because you ban things doesn't mean there's not operators operating. So it's really a challenge in getting some of those bans to be lifted so we have more opportunities for people to get licensed.
Yeah, and then one of the paradoxes is that with testing and with all the bureaucratic constraints, that adds to the cost. You have excise taxes. You've got a variety of taxes that boost the price of legal marijuana versus the black market, which doesn't have to deal with that, but you don't know what you're getting in the black market.
Yeah, and I think that's one of our main issues right now is trying to do more in the way of consumer education, right? So you have a chance to tell people, here is the clear difference between illegal operator and legal operator, and the things that they go through, and the fact that the products are tested, they're safe, and that's really what we're trying to convey to people, especially when you see, this vape crisis where people are getting sick. That was almost the, if there was a silver lining in that, it's that we can point to that and say, well, this is exactly why you need to go to a legal operator to get your products, because you can feel comfort in knowing that these products are safe and they've been through testing.
Yeah, we'll talk about that because we all know seed to sale is the big battle cry for legal marijuana, that you know exactly what you're getting. Well, what are the variables when you get it on the black market, and how stringent is the testing to make sure that what you purchase in the dispensary is the purest cannabis that you can find?
Right. So on the testing front, I mean, your cannabis products are tested more than most of the food that we eat. I mean, it's gone through a more stringent testing than the food we're actually putting in our bodies. So on that front, you can feel safe about it. But then when you go to the illegal market, I mean, as we've seen recently, we just did an enforcement effort in Southern California, and we served 45 search warrants. We took a random sampling of the products that we took out of those places. We brought it in for testing. More than 75% of the products we tested failed testing. A lot of them, the vape cartridges had vitamin E in there. These are the things that are making people sick. So the evidence is really overwhelming that, when you go to an illegal shop, you may be paying less, but what's the ultimate long-term cost of that, right? I mean, and as it relates to your health and well-being. So that's really what the picture we're trying to paint for people right now.
Yeah, but sadly, the business contraction because of the costs, the taxes, the cumbersome restrictions in municipalities that are not in my house, not in my backyard, making it more challenging for entrepreneurs, cannabis businessmen to make it happen. So what are the ensuing maybe incentives, or what are you doing to make it more viable for people who want to get in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at it from a lot of different angles. So first and foremost, for us at the Bureau of Cannabis Control, we have to look at our regulations on a regular basis and see what are we asking of folks? Can we make things more streamlined? Can we make things easier? Can we be more flexible? What are some changes we can make to make business operators their lives a little easier? And then you got to look at the next level, and you got to look at, okay, how is the industry going to to organize to try to get some changes legislatively that they need, because there are things that we can't, that are in statute that we can't touch, but a legislative fix can help them. So it's about also trying to really get the industry to organize and to come together on some big ticket items that could be fixed through the legislative process and ultimately signed by the governor.
Yeah, no, you talk about, as I mentioned, the excise tax 10%, the cultivation tax, there's other taxes, and the dual licensing system, municipal and state. This gets really cumbersome, and then you've got 3 organizations overseeing the industry in California: Department of Food and Ag, Department of Public Health, Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Cannabis Control, which is your bailiwick. But consolidation is in the works. And what's the timeline for that? And what do you hope that streamlining will bring to the industry?
So consolidation, I think first and foremost, I'd like to say that I think that the fact that we're embarking down this road is a sign that this administration, that the Newsom administration is very vested in this industry succeeding. And so I think that they're taking a look at, not only are they going to take a look at the tax and the way that the taxes are formulated and put on these businesses, but also with consolidation. One of the main things we heard from day one was, why are we the only state that has 3 licensing entities, right? A lot of people have multiple licenses where they're going to touch on each agency. So what we're doing now, and work has already started, and ultimately by, I think it's July of 2021, we're going to have one Department of Cannabis Control where you come for everything, one-stop shop. And so right now what you're seeing is work groups happening where we're talking about the ways that we're going to bring everything together. How do we consolidate our regulations, our communications teams, our HR, everything, right? So there's a lot of work to be done between now and that date in 2021.
Now, obviously, you're also probably very closely watching what's going on in Washington with the SAFE Banking Act passing the House now before the Senate, because that's also holding back industries in each state, and California the leader. So tell me what the trends are and what you expect on the horizon with that, because if I'm going into business and it's only it's a cash fuel business, and I can't park it, I can't move it, and I can't go interstate, that's going to be a hindrance.
Right, and I think ultimately the main takeaway is eventually we got to get to a point where we have federal legalization, because so much in the way of what we've already talked about, whether it's taxes, whether it's the fees that are on businesses, the fact that they can't bank, the fact that they can't even operate like a regular business and have tax write-offs, right? They can't even claim business expenses. I mean, these are things like if we had federal legalization, the banking issue and the tax issue that would go away immediately, and automatically operators would, then the licensing fees become less important because they can finally write off their business expenses and operate like a true business. So I think that as far as we always keep an eye on what other states are doing, and we try to solve these big problems. But I mean, we've also gone down that road with banking before, where it's not just going to happen overnight, and the solutions are not there in California just yet.
How does the legalization of hemp federally in America influence the prospect of getting a national cannabis agenda?
I think anything like that helps. I mean, I think it starts to normalize the industry, right? And then people aren't afraid of it anymore. And so we're making these moves with hemp, and the hope is that opens the door for cannabis as well, because the fact that and I'm just going to say this, the fact that you still treat cannabis as a Schedule I drug, the same as heroin, it's absurd, right? And I believe that everybody feels that same way, because you're basically saying that cannabis has no medical benefits, and what you're hearing at a conference like this is people up on stage saying it does, right? That they have real life experience of it helping their health. So I think federal legalization of hemp, hopefully opens a door, and we can get there hopefully sooner.
All right. So Gavin Newsom, powerful governor of California, advocate for Prop 64, which passed 2 years ago. His advocacy on a national level, how influential do you think that is going to be? Because usually if it happens in California, it happens first, and that paves the way, kind of pioneering a variety of societal, trends and the like.
I think I always say that it's better that California was not first to legalize, that we did have some data to look at in other states, Washington, Oregon, especially Colorado, so we could see some of the pain points. But California is very unique, and I think the governor's advocacy and really taking a lead on this issue is going to help us get over some of these the bumps that we've seen in the road. And so I think this year is going to be huge for the industry, because I think the governor is very invested, and I think you're going to see some big things happen this year.
In regards to licensing, you talk about provisional as a prelude. But just give us an idea. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to get in the industry. How challenging is it? How costly is it now? And how could that be ameliorated down the road if there are advancements in, well, streamlining the system and kind of reducing the bureaucracy, if you will, to take a chunk out of that black market, which is taking 80% of the cannabis revenue.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to happen. We need to continue to enforce against the illegal market. We've got to put a dent in the illegal market because that's the only way that legal operators are going to have the ability to fully stand up. We've got to continue to lower the cost for entry. It's too expensive for people right now. There's not enough options as far as jurisdictions are concerned. We need to do more in the way of working with local jurisdictions to get them over the hump. Figure out what are their barriers. Why are they not? Why is it just they want to ban it forever, or is something what's holding them back? And we need to do more in the way of trying to bridge that gap. But ultimately, I think, and I tell this to everybody, if I'm someone who's been in the industry operating for 20 plus years, and I've got this way of thinking about the way things were, and you come in with money and you think I've got an opportunity here, you're going to have an easier time than I am because you're just going to say, okay, give me the rules and I'll just follow them. I have this institutional knowledge and a way of doing things that I just can't get over that mental barrier. Like I can't figure out how to operate in this new reality. So I think that's a lot of what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and the fact that it's such a fluid industry in the sense that what's legal today is challenged tomorrow, and the rules change, the game changes. Just when I get a handle on one thing, there are modifications. Yep. So that makes it even more challenging. And does that benefit the big pharma industries that are jumping in and tobacco companies that are owning cannabis entities today? Is it more advantageous for them, or are we kind of playing the big man's hand rather than the small entrepreneur?
I don't know as much about that, but I think really what we all are focused on a regular basis is how do we have to preserve these legacy operators, these people who paved the road to get here. We can't lose them. I mean, these are the people they're the backbone of this industry. So we have to figure out ways to get them through this sort of turbulent period and onto the other side, so we have a balance of small, medium, large operators. And I think that was the goal ultimately, is there's a place for everybody. And so we, on the work we do on a regular basis, a lot of it is figuring out how do we make a business environment where everyone can survive.
Well, and thrive. And we're on our way, but it's been a slow and arduous process. Thanks so much for your time. Alex Traverso, the Assistant Chief of Communications, the Bureau of Cannabis Control. I'm Rich Walcoff on the W420 Radio Network.
You're listening to America's Cannabis Conversation on the W420 Radio Network.
Welcome back to the conversation, and joining us is a gentleman from Hawthorne Gardening Company. I know them because of who they're owned by, because I've been a user of their products for 50 years. Devon Langford is here with representing Hawthorne Gardening Company, and he's going to talk to us about some of the products and services that they have for not only home growers, but for large grow operations, both indoor and outdoor. Devon, thank you for coming on the conversation today.
Well, thank you for having me. Hello to everyone out there in 420 Radio listener land. Just looking forward to talking about some gardening and talking shop.
Let's get a quick overview of the company. Hawthorne Gardening Company has been around X amount of years, whatever, and what was their core business?
Well, Hawthorne Gardening was founded in 2014. It's a subsidiary of our parent company, Scott Miracle-Gro, and that company which has decades of legacy in the industry for horticultural products. But what really makes the Hawthorne Gardening Company unique is this is the hydroponic division of our parent company. We focus a lot on sustainable gardening solutions and also, on unique growing situations. So what it's based around is consolidating some of the top brands in the industry under one roof and under one distribution. And, it started in 1976 with General Hydroponics, which was a leader in the hydroponic retail space, came out with the very first liquid fertilizer for hydroponic growing and, amassed an empire and a huge following in the retail space. And in 2014, they were acquired by Scott Miracle-Gro and Hawthorne Gardening Company. paired up with Botanicare, which was around since 1996, and Gavita, which is from the 80s, which is a fantastic lighting company which revolutionized double-ended lighting in the horticultural space. And, consolidating these companies under one roof has been able to help us service not just the retail and home grower, but also the commercial grower and the ever-changing cannabis industry, which is becoming a huge user of hydroponic equipment and sustainable gardening products.
I guess the question that a lot of people are asking about product today, whether it's cannabis or CBD product, is how safe is it? And the safety begins with what you put in the ground or growing medium in order to make the plants grow and prosper.
Yeah, I would say it starts with the grower, absolutely. At the ground level, you get what you put in, and when you're choosing products with, the end results, looking for the highest quality outcome, that's what you're going to get. But if you're using, any old thing you can throw in the garden, you're probably just going to get the average results. Now, what you get with hydroponics is more readily available nutrients. The uptake goes into the plants quicker. You're getting a faster result for uptake, which leads to a little bit more an easier, forgivable experience when you're growing. Now, that's not to say there's not things that go wrong that are easier to solve when you're growing in soil. But at the end of the day, the hydroponics is the superior grow method when it comes to yields and uptake of nutrients.
It appears to me that it's a cleaner product. The way you grow it and how you grow it, there are less things that can leach into the plant from sources out of your control than if you go out and just plant it in the ground. Is that a fair statement?
Now, see, there's benefits and minuses when it comes to soil versus hydroponics. Now, soil, it's always going to be a fantastic method to grow, but it is kind of how you said it. It's you plant the plant and you're kind of at the mercy of the soil. Now, building up the biologicals in the soil zone and using high quality fertilizers and ingredients, that's always going to increase your end output. But when it comes to soil versus hydro, you have a lot more control with the hydroponics. And with the hydroponics, you're going to be controlling your water temperatures, controlling your pH fluctuations, things like this. So there's a little bit more thought process that goes into hydro that doesn't go into soil. But being a cleaner method, it is a good way to look at it too, because with hydro you have a lot less possibility of pests. Because you don't have the soil, which is a harbor for pests and pathogens. Now, whether you're growing in soil or growing in hydro, pests and pathogens are always going to be one of the things that you're looking out for. So it's preventative maintenance, doing things the right way, and as we like to say on the gardening consultations, there's 1,000 different ways to skin a cat. You can do it in soil, you can do it in hydro. There's no wrong way to do it. It's just about the inputs you put in and taking proper procedures in place to make sure that you are keeping things safe and healthy.
We're speaking with Devon Langford from Hawthorne Gardening Company, a division of Scott Miracle-Gro. Let me continue that part of the discussion. Again, will hydroponics for the grower deliver a more consistent product than soil?
So with the consistency and the canopy rate and the ability for nutrient uptake and your ability to control, I would say at the end of the day, hydro would be my more preferred method if I was looking for a uniform output for the end of my home grow or a commercial grow. See, a lot of these products they're formulated and they've got a history in the home grow, but they're also applicable for scaling up for the commercial grower too. Because a lot of these grows we've all known started off in a closet and moved into a warehouse, and you're seeing that same kind of reflection in the industry right now too, with the commercial cannabis and the white market going side by side with the traditional market, and our nutrients play well on both sides. And, we would never like to say just stick with one thing, but I think with hydroponics in a commercial setting, I think we'd all have to agree that's probably the way to go long term.
Devon, do you think I'll plead ignorance, Is the growing cycle from planting to harvesting different for hydroponics than going in the ground?
The only sense that would be different would be planting medium. So, in soil, you're going to use a earthworm casting based soil mix with some cocoa mix, where in hydroponics traditionally you're going to use rock wool cubes or soil. So it kind of varies. At the end of the day, using what's most effective and most cost effective for your grow, it kind of leads me into the revolutionary technology that we're able to bring with some of our research and development, leveraging some of our parent company resources. We've come out with new products that help everyone from the home grower to the commercial grower to be able to succeed.
So you're working with large, let's call them institutional growers, but you also have a product line for home growers. Are you anticipating with more and more states allowing people to grow a certain number of plants on their own? Is home growing a fad or is it fundamental?
I look at it like this, Dan, and it's a good question because I think 2020 is going to be the year of the LED and the home grower really coming to terms with what they can legally grow inside their own residence. And I think you're going to see an influx of these growers that they want to learn, they want the knowledge, and for the first time in this world, we're able to give that knowledge and advice to them. It wasn't only a couple of years ago where people were told you could never make a career out of this, you could never make a living talking about hydroponics and gardening. But it looks like at the end of the day that they were wrong, and the people like Hawthorne Gardening and the Larry Brooks of the world and the founders of these wonderful companies that were brought under one roof, they were right, and the other folks were wrong. So, I think it's about supplying the culture, making things available for the grower that's not just growing in the closet, but for them to be able to scale up. So I think the year of home grows is upon us, and it's just going to get bigger. The phenomenon is getting even bigger as we speak. People are talking about edibles and consuming CBD and home grows more than they ever did. I mean, CBD is one of the second most searched terms on Google right now, and I mean, people can grow not just cannabis at home, but they can grow hemp plants at home now too, which is a completely other side of the monster, growing and what's available to people.
So, Devon, in the time we have left, where do you see your opportunity for Hawthorne Gardening going forward?
Well, I think it really comes down to pushing the line for research and development and bringing out new revolutionary products. There's so many Me Too products out there in the horticultural world right now, and very, very little research has been done on the cannabis plant and hemp, so that we could actually, have some new things to learn about when it comes to this plant. Now, Hawthorne has made a huge investment in this, opening up a 50,000 square foot facility in Kelowna, British Columbia, to focus on research and development using our products and our nutrients, and being able to, put some truth to the myths when it comes to this plant that been stigmatized so long that, we could be, decades behind learning about some of the stuff that we, are just scratching the surface on. So the possibilities are endless, and Hawthorne's in a unique position to be able to lead that industry forward with the new products, with the LEDs, with the new commercial fertilizers, and the new liquid fertilizers for the home user. We're also going to throw out there, because the 420 radio network's so awesome, we're going to put a link out there to some of our retail partners, and we're going to have a tent package with one of our lights, some of our nutrients, some of our HVAC and home grow systems, and you can check them out, and you can use the promo code 420RN, and you can take advantage of a 10% discount thanks to the good folks over there at 420 Radio Network.
We're almost out of time, so why don't you take a moment, Devon, and tell people how they can find Hawthorne Gardening products and perhaps get in contact or follow you.
So you can check out Hawthorne Gardening Company at hawthornegc.com. You go to our retailer search site, and we have retailers all over the country, 11 distribution sites, and a bunch of online retailers that we work with that can facilitate everything from a commercial grow all the way down to your home grow. We're about connecting the dots on everything you need. I do personal consultations at Hydroponics Chef. I've got the recipe for your grow. And I also do take calls on our weekly radio show, Farm to Table Cannabis, on High Times TV and DFZ Radio. So, again, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to people.
Thank you so much. And, again, how do people take advantages of the 420 RN discount?
So we're going to provide you a link to put up on the site, and it's going to be Grower's House. It's going to be to a tent package with a Gavita LED. This is a revolutionary product. This product is focused on saving you electricity while still putting out the same amount of output that you would expect from a classic high-pressure sodium light. So same yield, same quality, less electricity. And that's growershouse.com, and we're going to provide you a product checkout code. That's 420RN to get 10% off on our tent package, and we will ship anywhere.
We've been speaking with Devon Langford. Thank you for joining us today.
We appreciate the opportunity to educate some listeners. Happy growing. America's Cannabis Conversation.